Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Branding Bud Live, the live stream that's 100% THC, 0% WTF. Every week, we bring business people to talk about the business of cannabis. I'm David Paleschuck, the founder of the Branding Bud Consulting Group, author of the first book on cannabis branding, Branding Bud, the commercialization of cannabis. And I am here with my BCF, Adriana Hemans, my best cannabis friend, the director of marketing at Green Meadows. Hey, Adriana, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, thanks. It's a beautiful day to do a live stream, don't you think?
It is.
And
It's,
you have some lovely flowers behind you to mark the occasion.
I do. They smell wonderful too.
And I want to say hi to Rodney and hi to Robin. Good to see a couple familiar faces in the chat. You know what's crazy about Branding Bud Live is like you really never know who is going to show up. And it always seems to happen at like exactly the right moment. When we were talking about AI and Eric Mercado just happened to show up. We were talking about beverages and Ben Kennedy showed up. So it really is cool. So we like to see who's with us today, who's paying attention, who's listening, who's curious. So please feel free to just say hi. Let us know where you're from, and drop any other random tidbit in there you feel like, because we want to get to know you.
It's true. It was last week was very serendipitous in that
Mm-hmm.
way. You know, we spoke about AI. Eric from Chirpley came, and as we were speaking about beverages, Ben Kennedy from Fable jumped on. So it's pretty cool that we've got some wonderful people. And there's Christian Gray. Hey,
Hey,
Christian.
Christian.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited. I mean, every week I'm excited about the show, but today I'm really excited for three reasons. One, I'm grateful as always to our sponsor, High Hopes. And High Hopes is a creative agency that specializes in the cannabis industry. They've been around for 10 years in the industry, and they actually understand everything we go through as brand owners and as consultants, as people in the industry. So
10 years
if
is
you're
a
looking
long time in cannabis for sure.
10 years. That's right. That's like 50 years in real life. Dog years, or maybe 70
70
perhaps.
years.
Yeah. But they do all sorts of things like branding, packaging, web design, SEO, marketing. And if you're interested in checking out their site, and I think you should, and they've actually worked for some really well-known brands. So brands that you all know, like Curio Wellness and a whole bunch of others. But
Heck
check them
yeah.
out at hirehopes.com.
Check them out.
And
They do cool
yeah,
work.
they do. Also, we've got some our courses that we've just set up, and we've been getting some really great feedback on that. So we have two courses: how to create a meaningful cannabis brand, and the 14 cannabis brand archetypes. And those are pretty cool. We've gotten some great feedback, so we'll put a link up shortly. But check it out, and and you might be interested in that.
Yeah, it's
We also
definitely for, sorry to cut you off, David, it's definitely for people who are facing challenges in marketing and branding. Um, maybe you just need a little spark of inspiration. Maybe you need to redo your whole brand. In either case, there's a lot of content there that's like immediately applicable. So if that sounds like you, definitely check it out.
That's right. And specifically understanding who your customer is. And we're going to get into that a little bit later with James as well, our guest today. I just want to call out Aaron Sells.
Hey,
Hello from home.
Aaron. Hey, Kim from Bermuda. What's up?
Yeah. Okay. Third thing I'm super excited about is our guest today, and that's James Kennedy. James is the founder of Apothecana, which is probably one of the better known cannabis THC and CBD brands. He's now also the CEO of Flying Colors, which is a consulting agency.
Mhm.
And I have never had an uninteresting conversation with James. He is so on top of it, at the cutting edge of everything, super smart, super bright, worked for Aveda in the real world and some other companies that he'll probably call out later. So his experience in product development, products, trends, and things going on is pretty high and pretty amazing. I'm always impressed with him. So that said, some of the questions we'll be addressing today are: how has the landscape of cannabis product development evolved over the past decade? What are the challenges in formulating cannabis products to diverse consumers? And what are the emerging trends in cannabis product development? What are we seeing now? What's happening now?
Mhm.
So that said, I'm super excited about all those things, and I'm also excited that we've got a group of people here today with us in the audience listening.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining us as always.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, that said, let's bring out James Kennedy.
Let's do it.
Get this party started.
Woohoo!
Hey,
Hey,
Dave, how are
James.
you? Hey, Adriana.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for
Um,
having me.
tell us a little bit about yourself. What should people know about you?
All right. Well, my background was in industrial design and, so kind of like a designer by training and systems design and product design and all that kind of good stuff. As David mentioned, I got my start working at the brand Aveda, and I was doing, like some packaging, and I went there because I was very interested in environmentally friendly packaging, and this was kind of in the early 2000s, and so it was really great experience working there. And then shortly after I was working there, I had the opportunity to work with the founder of Aveda, and he was launching a new brand. He had sold Aveda to Estee Lauder and had a few years of like a non-compete, and then he was launching a new brand. And I went on to be creative director of that brand called Intelligent Nutrients. And I kind of thought I'd be doing, similar kind of stuff, the brand identity and packaging and messaging and all that. But he had this really cool lab, and this was in Minnesota. I went out there and started seeing how he was developing products on his own. And my kind of thought was that there was these chemists and scientists, and this really specific way of formulating product that I think does exist out there to some extent. But he'd have these different vendors come in, and they'd have briefcases of different essential oils, and we'd sit there and smell through all of them. And he'd start talking about things like that I wasn't really accustomed to, like plant harmonics. And it was interesting to see even how when we would blend products, you had this fragrance organ that it was on, and we were creating chords and harmonies, um, and that really like kind of blew me away, because it was just this aha moment that I was like, oh, it's not all about these chemicals and binding these things together. It's really about letting the beauty of the plant ingredients shine through. And I started doing a little bit of formulation on my own, just like making some products for family and friends, and kind of kept up my professional endeavors. I spent a little bit of time working for Johnson and Johnson, doing everything from packaging and retail launches and all that kind of stuff. um, but this was around 2008 or 9, and I had a buddy of mine who was starting one of the very first dispensaries in Boulder, Colorado. And he went on to have a somewhat famous brand called 710 Labs. But back then,
Oh yeah, we know
very
710.
yeah, most folks do. Um, but back then, it was working on this project called The Greenest Green, and this was one of the very first medical dispensaries in Boulder, Colorado. And I had some of internalized some of this information about like the plants and just the different things that they could do, much more deep, I think, than most people think of when they think of aromatherapy. But I started seeing people that were coming into the shop that I mean, there's definitely the college kids, they got their cards so they could get their friends some weed, but there were all these other people with these different conditions that were coming in to, like, to get cannabis to really try to treat something that they were struggling with in their life. And fast forward a little bit, I had another dispensary in Denver for a while, and one kind of chance encounter with this husband and wife duo that were formulating some skincare products, and was asking me about cannabis. Just it's like, let's try some of these things out. And lo and behold, we started mixing up some of these products, and they just they worked. I mean, even from the first batch this guy ever made, he's like, I had some kind of issue with his elbow, and he's like, I just didn't feel that issue with my elbow anymore. So felt it was on to something. And it was in those early days, it was kind of like people had the impression of cannabis, it was about, still for the most part, about getting high. And we went around with some of these early products that we had, and that was a big kind of feedback that we got, was like, if it doesn't get you high, what's the point? and I knew some of them weren't the right customers, but wasn't too deterred by all of that. And like early days, the business kind of started and then failed, or at least I thought it failed. Run out of money and all those kind of things. But um, you know, it medical market opened up in Colorado, and more people started, catching on, and um, eventually made it into, I guess really like what became my identity and what I was really passionate about. Um, and you asked about some of the passions. I think just this notion of plant medicine and our relationship with plants, and how that kind of changed over maybe the past 150 years from people before really relying on plant medicine. All these things really struck a chord with me. And happy to expand on some of the journey with Apothecana a little bit more. But it was definitely those early days, with this brand new ingredient that was kind of like, oh, what, the sky's the limit to the things that we can do with this. And being able to take some of my background and, I guess, my philosophy about plants, into this whole new category was just so wildly exciting. And and some of the early products I was trying to source all local ingredients from Colorado, like peppermint and arnica and juniper, and those really became the foundation of some of these early products. We're just
Looks
taking
like
some other
things are really
plants that.
bringing you back. I used to use one of these ones with arnica. It was in my bedside table for years. Put it on my feet when I got married because I was worried about walking around in
Oh,
high heels all day. So use this to eliminate foot pain from wearing heels, and it worked.
yeah,
And
yeah.
we also just show this too, just because sometimes brand recognition isn't fully there when you mention a brand's name, but when you see the product, you're like, oh yeah, I remember this. So I I thought it was important just for us to bring some of the photographs up again, just to talk about the brand, to talk about the packaging, just to show everybody, as they say, a picture's worth a thousand words.
Yeah, 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 and in the packaging, I mean, that was the other thing I think I kind of noticed in cannabis is, you know, back then. I mean, I guess like early 2010s, a lot of the packaging was like, these kind of sexy cannabis nurses on a salve or something. That would be like, this category. And from some of my experience having worked at Johnson and Johnson and some of these other, large beauty retailers, I felt that this is such a new category. It needs to be able to resonate with people, in a way that they can kind of understand. You can't put all of these new things out at once. Sometimes it requires, I think, just repetition of messages that they're accustomed to really kind of get these messages across. So even though maybe my aesthetic is a little bit more playful and bold, we definitely kept a lot of the color waves around. That was a big part of product development in the early days, for me and for the brand, was trying to make it feel like it's something that you would recognize at if you're walking into your local CVS, or any pharmacy or anything like that. So giving people just the breaking down some of those fear barriers, I think that that folks had around just this entire category of products.
Which I think topicals as a category does that in and of itself, which is cool. Like for a lot of people who may not be getting high or wanting to get high. I know Zachary has a differing opinion on that it's still about getting high. But for some of these older folks with like muscle pain, they're like, oh, let me try it. And then they realize how effective it is. And then they, become a medical card holder or something like that. So topicals is like very approachable compared to other categories, I think.
I was at a dinner party once, and there was this woman it was kind of a cannabis themed, I forget what the name of those events were, but it was beautiful, like outside, in like in Boulder, and like a farm setting. And she's like, I respect what everyone's doing, but I just don't see myself ever trying cannabis. And I was like, I assure you, before the evening's over, you will have had tried cannabis. And and then a little bit later on, she was willing to try some of the products, and I think got a early convert that evening.
James, tell us about, I mean, you just mentioned some of the packaging, and tell us, like, over the last 10 years, Has cannabis product development changed?
I mean, yeah, it's I guess it's changed quite a bit. I mean, there's still, and I really appreciate, like a brand like, let's say, Rose Delights, which still does a ton of stuff in-house. They kind of like make all their formulations and work with these chefs and bring all this, but not everyone, that's not really the way that most CPG business works. You generally work with a lot of partners. Now, it was about exactly a decade ago that the Cole memo came out, and that was, this kind of federal guidance that they weren't going to go after people that were working in cannabis. So that was like what started to open up the floodgates, I guess, and kind of professional. More people were able to start at least exploring some of these ideas than they had before. It was still a few years before you could get insurance or product liability insurance or things like that. um, but I think in the early days, you kind of had to do everything yourself. And that was something that I think a lot of folks would, had said to us is like, if you weren't fully vertically integrated, you'd never be able to make it. You really had to do everything yourself. But having worked in some other industries and seeing how important, partnerships were and really being able to get things out to scale, I kind of, held the belief that, that eventually over time that would kind of come around. So, that was the first, I think big opening to be able to work with other partners. But still at that point, I mean, we did a lot of sampling through those like, kind of small little sachets, that you might find in a magazine or something. And I spent almost a year trying to find someone that would fill product for us. And we never did. So we had to, buy a piece of equipment from China and figure out how to make it work. And, basically do it all ourselves. um, and I think also in the early days there was this little bit of an idea that cannabis was kind of like this panacea, that it was gonna, it was a cure-all. It was a little bit maybe snake oil like in its, in its approach, like, smoke this and everything, will feel better. And I think that's another big change that's happened over time, is just this diversification of all these different applications that folks have. And I mean, it's almost like too much to try to expand into. Not only is it the different cannabinoids, or the difference between hemp and what we would classify as like medical or recreational marijuana or cannabis. All these different form factors started appearing. And back then there was really, you kind of had your topicals, tinctures, and then smokables. Those were, pretty much the categories that were out there. I mean, even before really a lot of edibles started, to make it out. um, and I think, in California over the years, there is, all these different extinction events that folks would refer to, where some new regulatory guideline came out that made a lot of the ways that folks were doing things just untenable to move forward with. And that also happened, I think, in the hemp marketplace. CBD came out like with this sky's the limit type of, mentality. And there's quite a few factors of why that didn't hold out to be true. But we kind of, I think, recently saw a little bit of a collapse of that as well. Though I don't want to say that it's it's over, it's gone. It's just, it's going to evolve in all of these different ways. And I had a friend of mine that I was meeting with a few months back, who was, he was in the grain business, and he was talking about the next wave of grains, and was going through like how coffee kind of operated. Like, early on there was Folgers, and that kind of laid the groundwork for Starbucks. And then that laid the groundwork for Stumptown. And then that laid the groundwork for fourth wave coffee, which is, basically what you might get from your, Davey, much more about coffee than I do, being in Seattle, but what you might might get from your like local roaster. And that's kind of happened with cannabis as well. It's, there's kind of these boom and bust cycles, where the categories have expanded out, then contracted down. And a lot of players go out there and get their expectations up, and only so many kind of make it through. So I very much feel like we're kind of on this, I don't even know what wave to call it, but definitely like from that post-COVID boom to a little, or during COVID boom to a little bit of a post-COVID bust, that it's kind of filtering out the market, which is really great for innovation. And there's going to be a whole new generation of products that are going to kind of rise up from the ashes of unfortunately what a lot of people built and lost. But I think it's each one of these cycles broadens the opportunities.
Yeah. And I think too, in our comments here, Zachary is alluding to that cycle too, is, some brands that are maybe ones aimed at upmarket consumers, as he points out, fall flat, which is all part of that contraction process where, the size of the market doesn't support all the brands that are in it right now. And some of them are going to get the chopping block, unfortunately to say. There's such a diversity though of product types, as you pointed out, James, all these different form factors and ways to slice these consumer segments, because it's so diverse, that I think that with every cycle, we'll just see exponential opportunities for product development. Do you agree with that?
I mean, yeah, I definitely do. I mean, I have heard quite a bit of, like, oh, we're developing this line of products that'll be for, like the sophisticated Wall Street, smokers, or, this line of products will, be for soccer moms, or, like any other, like kind of these imagined demographics that should, exist over time. But they're not really quite there ready, yet. And still, as I work with different clients, and I think in more established states, they're kind of hip to the realization that really 80% of their products, this is more on the recreational cannabis side of things, 80% of their products really go to like kind of heavy smokers. It's not all these new emerging categories. It's the people that already understand this, and it can be kind of a waste of resources to try to build into some of these. Now I say that, and I think one of the most underserved, represented demographics is seniors, because with my business with Apothecana, we did over half of our sales went to folks that were over the age of 55, and they were awesome customers. They were really, really great customers. They referred our products to friends. They generally had the money to not, go out and try to find someone that was cheaper.
They're loyal to the brand. We have a big segment of seniors that are customers of Green Meadows. And I'm hearing everything you're saying, totally agreeing that that's a really important segment.
Really awesome segment. Oh, go ahead.
Do you want to jump into a little quiz, though, since our audience seems pretty warmed up now?
Sure. Just to call out one thing quickly, one of the things that I really enjoyed, James, was I believe there was an advertisement for Apothecana, which was basically showing tennis players, again, appealing to this older age category. So it's interesting to see that. It's very unusual in the cannabis space. But in light of time, let's jump to our Canna quiz, shall we? Take it away, Adriana.
All right. So, audience, if you think you know the answer, please feel free to jump in and take a guess at what the answer to this question is. The question is, the average product developer begins designing when what percentage of the product requirements are known? Is it A, 15%, B, 35%, C, 50%, or D, 65%? And this is not cannabis specific. This is just product development all over the map.
And this comes from the Principles of Product Development Flow, which is like a pretty well-known book in the industry for those that are into product development and industrial design, so on and so forth. And there's Jason McHugh from Califari, one of my favorite brands.
Hey, Jason.
Califari.
Jason's guessing C, 50%.
Interesting.
See if anyone else will hazard a guess.
Audience, it's your chance to shine. That's my favorite thing I say every week. James, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I don't think I know this one offhand. I'm gonna go with the same answer though. I think it's probably about half. So C.
Cool. And we should point out too, Adriana and I always talk about who's your customer, knowing your customer. So so this question, I mean, almost insinuates that that people should understand who they're developing a product for, and even though it might be a number of people or a number of consumer segments, the one thing I hear in the cannabis space all the time is it's for everybody. And so so it's kind of funny, cannabis products are not for everybody,
Right.
at least starting off 21 and above, right?
Right. And
So
Christian's got to run. Thanks for coming by, Christian. Christian also guessed C, 50%. We
thank you.
also have a guess for B from David Rain. And I see Zachary guessed A. We also have an A guess from Rodney. Should we reveal the answer?
Yes, we should. Here it comes, drum
Waiting in
roll.
suspense. The answer is C, 50%. So good job, Christian. Jason, I see someone else voted for C. I can't see your name yet. Sorry, for some reason, some names don't populate in Restream from LinkedIn. But good job, everybody who guessed C. It's 50%.
It is indeed. Well, so let's jump to a couple of more questions because time is running fast today.
Yeah.
Um, so speaking about that, James, like, how should one approach, developing a cannabis product if they have a specific consumer segment in mind?
Um, I think, well, I mean, there's a lot of luck involved in all reality. I think a big part of all of this is, you need to know that people want what you're making. That's tremendously important, and the more luck element of that is timing. A great idea, kind of the wrong time might just not hit. Um, so I think if you have a target in mind, it's really good idea to try to get to know that target. I mean, kind of a popular activity, or an activity that a lot of product developers will create like a persona. So, for example, we created this brand character. I think her name was Jessica, and we found that this 27-year-old female demographic, even though our demographic was much broader, was the most influential. They shared with their friends, they shared with their significant others, they shared with their family. So we really tried to get to know this customer. Where did they shop? What music did they listen to? Just what are they into? What are they looking for? What are their common pain points? And having that character, I think, is can be really helpful, because you're not just looking at stats and numbers, but you're starting to put on human characteristics to this, and it just makes it a little bit more, I think, believable. And my perspective has largely been is just kind of just going through iterations, and seeing what hits, and experimentation, and not trying to just be dead on right away. We had developed this product. It was called the Daily Hit. I don't know if y'all ever saw that one, but we did it in conjunction with a beauty retailer called Cat Beauty. And part of the development process for that was to go into the retailer, to talk to all the sales associates, and to ask them what people were buying. Like, what is this, what are people into? And we came back with all these other ingredients that we hadn't really thought of, or some I wasn't even really super familiar with. And kind of ordered some of those ingredients, start putting them into the product, and making some adjustments until we found that, okay, we're really reflecting what that average consumer is kind of shopping for in the store. And the big part about that product for me was we wanted it to taste great, because I thought so many tinctures and cannabinoid products in general really just don't taste good. So that was a lot of just sitting there with a spoon and trying these different things, and thinking about how that would work in a salad dressing, or in a smoothie, or in different things like that. So I think it's having a general. It's difficult, like you said, to try to develop a product for the planet Earth. That's just way too broad. It's very helpful to get specific and have some characteristics that you really understand that person might resonate with. And then I think there's a lot of trial that really makes great products, and it blows my mind sometimes. I don't want to call it anyone in particular, but some of the bigger like cannabis companies that invest a lot into beverage, like the beverages just didn't taste very good. And I just couldn't understand how they could bring products to market that didn't taste great, especially in that category.
Especially in such a crowded category too. And we have not only cannabis beverages, but all these other beverages that are expected to taste good, and people have those high standards for everything now. So that is kind of wild. Question for you, James, looking at product development for adult use consumers and then also medical consumers, like what do you need to keep in mind when you're making products that should, or you want them to fit in both categories?
Well, I think there's some kind of broad categories, or considerations to look at. Medical efficacy. Is this really backed by science? You got a lot more flexibility on the recreational side of things to have fun. But if you're dealing with, not just your end customer being someone that, might have a condition that they're trying to treat, but also dealing with healthcare practitioners and folks, involved in that whole cycle, you do need to be a lot more specific of what you're trying to achieve. And I think you also need to be very clear in what the active ingredients going on. It should resemble medicine a little bit more than like, fruit flavored, delicious, like cannabis confections. So, I guess going along with the medical efficacy is, dosage and potency. How should this be taken? How frequently? Again, in the recreational market, maybe you want 3 milligrams to, help you get to sleep. Maybe you want a little bit more to have fun at a concert. On the medical side of things, that needs to be a little bit more thought through. And the quality and safety standards, again, on the recreational side, these are really important factors. But when you're dealing with medical patients, it can be, I don't want to say, well, maybe limiting. There's not as many other things that you want to put in there. You want it to be a little bit more straightforward. And I think that also extends out to just, really the education and the support of these products and how they're going to get there out in the market. It needs to be a little bit more specific to, yeah, at the end of the day, what you're trying to achieve. And I think that's one of, the incredible things about cannabis in general is you can try to have an impact on all these different mood states or, feelings that people want to feel. And, it can be really kind of a fun, choose your own adventure. But on the medical side of things, I think it does need to resemble, some more traditional delivery methods and ways that people have taken medicine in the past, so as not to, create any unnecessary confusion.
Absolutely. One of the things Adriana and I often talk about is, the metric or the component which we call additive versus subtractive. So additive is enhancing what you're doing, which is more adult use. It's more, I'm taking a hike, or I'm about to paint a painting, or I'm about to do something that I want to enhance.
Or it's date night, or you're going to the movies. You got the idea.
Date night is what I was thinking. Thanks. But subtractive is exactly the opposite. Subtractive is I have pain. It's your mindset when you're thinking about taking an Advil. You want to alleviate that pain. You want it to happen quickly. Those are two different need states and mindsets that that people are in when they're consuming, often when they're consuming cannabis. The other thing, just to go back briefly, you said luck before. I mean, timing has everything to do with it too. If you look at cannabis beverages just 5 years ago, the technology wasn't the same as it is today. Where we have nanosonification, we've got smaller particles which allow for faster uptake. Whereas just 5 years ago, you would have super sweet beverages which were designed to cover the taste of the cannabis, and when you opened up the beverage, there was an oil slick on top because it was separating. So, it's just really interesting to see the technologies that have changed. And just also one other thing, adding to luck and timing, I think consumers are really looking for the latest, greatest thing. They're looking for, people have gone from CBD and it had its trajectory, and then sort of now it's, fallen from grace, if you will. we did the same thing with NFTs. We're doing the same thing with AI. I could list all the, all the trends, all the technologies, all of those things. So it's really interesting to sort of see it's not only a great product, it's not only luck, it has everything to do with timing and technology and all these things sort of coming together to offer something to the right people at the right time. So now going back, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox for a minute. Going back to something that you had said a moment ago, which was educating. Could you talk to us a little bit more about educating and just being transparent with regard to what the products are, what they're made from, how they should be used, when they should be used? Because I think that's a missing component in the cannabis space is really the education about and the transparency about products.
And sorry to interrupt. Hi to Jordan, Yo, and hi to Eddie from Detroit. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, so with education, and I mean, I personally, I lean on the side of like the edutainment. I want messaging that sticks and resonates with people. And I think kind of gets them in the right frame of mind to really want to dive deeper. So it's not like this. Uh, Putting all of this information on the forefront and putting the onus on the customer to dive into it and try to disseminate it all. I think that's one of the powers of brand is you can bring people in with this messaging that really resonates on a human level, that's relatable, that makes them maybe even brings up some nostalgia or other experiences that they've had in life, and then take them like on a more of a storytelling pathway where that information becomes evident and clear, and it's stickier that way, when it's not just all thrown out there at the beginning. And that's not just through written word or through trying to read something off. That can also happen through, I think, creative brand storytelling, and whether that be graphics or motion graphics, or I really love when I see brands create these universes. And it's very popular, I think, with I don't know if you're familiar with the cereal brand Off Limits, but that's kind of like that good for you cereal that you'll start seeing, in the grocery aisle, like some $9 Cheerios. But anyway, they have on all of their different products, they create these characters. And these characters, have these whole universes that they live in. And throughout the box, you kind of go on these journeys with these characters. So it's not hitting you over the head with like, this is better for you because it has these things or it doesn't have these things. It's inviting you in with a much more provocative kind of catch, like, come enter this universe. And as you enter that universe, you're kind of being educated along the way. So I think if you can make it fun, it's going to be more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone's looking for a backstory, and one of our comments here is edutainment has been the new buzzword. It's true. It's hopefully it will replace disruptive, which is one of the words that has driven me crazy. But
we're disrupting live streaming right now, David.
Apologies. Well, we have gone through only just a few of our questions, but I see that we've almost come to the end of our time that we share, our 45 minutes every week. James, is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with? Is there a book? Is there a movie? Is there an experience that that you want to share with people?
Oh, I really did enjoy seeing Oppenheimer in the theater, but I hadn't been in a movie theater for a while, and I was like, man, that was so loud, all the explosions. But anyway, that's probably just showing my age a little bit. I was thinking about the books, and I had a few, because I'm really a huge fan of plant intelligence. That's like my favorite subject, and I first got into that. There's a book called The Hidden Life of Trees, which was like this German forestry workers experience, and starting to understand that these trees weren't just sitting there in isolation, like I guess that's like, and from a biological standpoint, they're just all these individual things. They're really an ecological system, and that's a great book. But the one that, again, in the theme of great storytelling, there's a book called The Overstory by Richard Powers. That's one of my very, very favorite books. And that talks about the sentience of trees and the communications networks, and, really kind of, I think, puts into perspective, just as human beings, we kind of see ourselves as the central forces of everything. But the way that that book is written and showing these much longer timelines, I think it shows, how we're more part of a bigger thing. And on that same topic, one of my favorite books is Braiding Sweetgrass, which is a little bit more of a indigenous perspective on ecology and plants, and kind of the same theme of maybe getting off our high horse of being so central to everything that happens around us. We are participants in this greater thing that's happening around us. Not we don't always need to be the main characters, and I think life can be a little bit more entertaining if you take on that, maybe a little less stressful if you take on that perspective as well. So yeah, The Overstory and Braiding Sweetgrass are a couple of my very favorite books on plant intelligence.
Awesome. I jotted those down. I'm going to check them out for sure.
Me too. Cool. Well, James, thank you so much for joining us today. God, there were so many more questions I would have loved to have.
I got all these notes I never got to use. Yeah.
Oh man, we're going to have to come. You'll have to come back and we'll do another one.
All right.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, James, not only for what you've done in the industry, for what you continue to do, and really your perspective. I mean, it's really refreshing. And like I said earlier, there hasn't been a conversation that we've had that I haven't thoroughly enjoyed. So thank you so much for all you do, and we'll see you soon. Keep doing it.
And anytime, David. And thanks, Adriana, for having me.
Thanks, James.
All right.
Well, as I always say, that was my fastest 45 minutes of the week, and that went really fast.
It really did.
It did.
Do they keep getting faster? Is time moving faster? What's happening?
I think as we get older, yes, time in relative to our lifespan, things get faster.
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah. Well, so from one Kennedy to another, we've got a great show next week. And we have Ben Kennedy. Ben Kennedy is the CEO and founder of Fable Libations. We're going to talk about cannabis and craft beverages, and I'm super excited to speak to Ben about that.
That happens to be my favorite cannabis beverage, so I'm really pumped about that one too.
Yeah, we're super excited. And by the way, there's no relationship between, or not that I know of, between James Kennedy and Ben Kennedy. Also, just calling it up again now, we've got our courses up online, so please check those out. Creating a Meaningful Cannabis Brand and the 14 Cannabis Brand Archetypes. For our listeners here, we've got a 25% discount. Don't forget to use BBEDU25 if you check it out. That would be awesome. And then really lastly, I just want to thank again our sponsors, High Hopes, a great agency. As I said earlier, they've been around for 10 years. They know what we go through on a daily basis. They know our issues, and I super highly recommend them. Branding, packaging, marketing, SEO, all of that good stuff, which I know is super tough in the industry for a lot of folks. So please check them out at I'veGotHigherHopes.com. Outside of that, please be sure to check out brandingbud.com, cannabis's best kept secret. And with that, we'll say goodbye, and we look forward to seeing everybody next week. Thanks again for everybody showing up, listening to our show, participating in our show. We really love you, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, Adriana.
Thanks for joining us. Bye. And the feedback has been great on the course. Thanks for asking.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.